Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is another Wednesday evening, and so that means another installment of Inside the Helmet. The
Yeah, the barking dog edition.
mhm. Yep. We wanted to start this off. We usually will start by talking about football. Obviously, that's what we both um are the most well versed in, both in just our time watching the sport, but also what kind of maybe gives us a leg up intellectually over maybe the common fan is we both have extensive experience either playing or coaching or both.
Or watching.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
already said watching.
Oh,
Um,
sorry.
anyway, um, we usually will focus on the skill position players because I'm a quarterback and my dad here was a wide receiver. And all in all, that's just where your eyes as a spectator usually go on any given play. You're watching the quarterback, you're watching the ball, but you're not watching the big guys, the linemen. And so we wanted to start today off by giving a little appreciation and kind of some more insight to their side of the game, because in many ways they're playing an entirely different game of football that kind of goes under the radar for the most part, when in reality the trenches is what they call it. What goes on in the trenches often actually has the most impact ultimately on how a game goes. So
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
want to take it away and kind of open this up.
Some appreciation tonight for, we affectionately refer to them as the big uglies. Doesn't actually mean they're ugly, but what the job they're doing is ugly.
That is true, yeah.
It's not a pretty job. It's a dirty, gritty, grinded out,
Mhm.
sweaty, sort of a wrestling match uh,
Yep.
type of a thing. There's not a lot of glamour, and I mean, you don't see too many, especially offensive linemen, um, getting interviewed and getting commercial deals and all of that.
Mhm.
And those are the guys. I mean, honestly, if you told me that I had to build a team to win, and I could have reasonably good skill position players and a great offensive and defensive line, I think I'm winning the championship.
Yeah.
As opposed to, give me the best skill position players and a lousy offensive and defensive line, we're probably not going to win. And so,
Mhm.
these are the guys that are the really big dudes, the guys that when they walk, down the hallway or down the street, you look and you go, I bet that guy's a football player. And so I think first of all, we should differentiate between with the offensive and the defensive line. Um, the offensive line is the most underappreciated group on a football field by
I agree.
far.
I
Not
agree.
underappreciated by the skill position players, but by the
Mhm.
fans. Because,
Yeah.
like you said, they're busy watching the ball, right?
Mhm.
The defensive line, I think, sometimes gets a little bit of a celebration, especially if you have a guy who's a really good edge rusher, putting pressure on the quarterback. It's a lot more visible. There'll be some plays where they get sacks and then they get to dance and celebrate.
Yeah.
And
But
and we
with the offensive line, like the best plays by the offensive line are the ones where nothing notable or exciting happens. Like, okay, the quarterback had enough time in the pocket to deliver a throw downfield.
right. And you could have let's just say four defensive linemen if you're playing a 4-3 set.
Mhm.
You could have three, average to pretty good defensive linemen, but if you have a dominant, especially pass rusher. I'm thinking like a Bruce Smith, a Reggie White from several decades ago. Um, they could make that spectacular play with 2 minutes to go and get the quarterback sacked. With the offensive linemen, they're really a cohesive unit. I mean, these are five guys, maybe six if you
Mhm.
include the tight end, that
Yeah.
have to work as a unit. And on most plays, um, they, well, depends upon whether it's a running play or a passing play. But if it's a passing play and the quarterback had time to step forward, plant his foot, and deliver the ball, whether it was completed or not, then all five guys did their job.
Mhm.
But all it takes is one guy on the offensive line to step wrong or miss a block or something like that, and your quarterback's laying on his back and the play's over.
Mhm.
So they, more than any other group, they all have to work cohesively as a unit. So I guess let's start with them. The guys who wind up on the offensive line in youth football are honestly your biggest players on the team who don't have like some weird freakish speed.
Mhm.
I've coached youth football teams where the biggest player on the team was like the third fastest, and so I had to find a way to get him the ball. But these are the guys who have the size, and the reason, of course, that they have the size is because the other team is going to put their big guys right there on the defensive line, and if you don't have size to block them, then the
Mhm.
ball's never going to get out of the backfield.
Yep.
And I have, it's one of the worst parts about coaching youth football, honestly, is sort of breaking the news to the kid who's oversized that, look, you're going to have to spend a lot of your time here blocking for these other guys
Mhm.
because if you don't, we have no hope. And
Mhm.
every kid laying in their bed at night who's 10, 12 years old is dreaming about throwing, catching, running,
Mhm.
for touchdowns. And
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
you were always taller than everybody else.
Yep.
For those who don't know, our co-host here, Michael, is 6'5" tall, and as a quarterback, which is great. But when you were in fourth grade, you were a head above, a head taller than everybody else. And
Yep.
before I started coaching your team, the very natural thing was to put you on the offensive line. So
Mhm.
you spent seasons doing that.
And also, I think it's worth mentioning that in youth football in like second grade, I mean, sure, I probably still had the best arm on the team, although not by quite the gap that it would be now. Um, but it's also important to note the importance of having a good quarterback is at its lowest in that second
Yeah,
grade football league I was playing because the quarterback couldn't run, and I mean, who the heck was I going to throw it to? No one could catch.
nobody could catch yet. They didn't have hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
So yeah, you did spend several seasons as an offensive lineman,
Mm-hmm.
and actually at that age, because you're still growing into your body, you don't have the base weight in your hips and your thighs, and
Mm-hmm.
so you were really trying to block guys who were a head shorter than you, and you were having a hard time bending down to get your pad level even with theirs. So, nah, I don't know. It's one of those things we could talk about. We could
Yeah.
spend a segment talking about youth football strategies, but nobody would care.
Yeah.
But as you get older and into middle school, high school, and definitely college, the roles pretty much get defined of who's going to be the skill position players, who's got speed, who's got an arm, and who are the big uglies going to be. And my experience, and I want to praise the offensive linemen because they have to work as a unit of five guys or six guys. They tend to be fairly intelligent.
Mhm.
Uh, uh,
Absolutely.
I mean, very interesting people to talk to, and they're large. And the offensive linemen, despite their ability to be violent against other big guys on a football field, generally they're a bunch of teddy bears. Um,
Absolutely.
they're offensive linemen are like intelligent teddy bears. And when I was playing, I was a wide receiver, and of course I was friends with the skill position guys. But I think some of my best friends on the teams I was on were those big intelligent teddy bears.
Hmm.
Um, and so, talk about Michael. You've played, you know, uh, enough football with enough offensive linemen. Um, can you kind of talk just a little bit about how they communicate with each other? The defense is always shifting, like right before
Mhm.
the snap, and there's a lot of communication that goes on that the fan in the stands doesn't hear or
Yeah.
understand, and how they're trying to arrange so that everybody winds up getting blocked.
Yeah, exactly like you said. There's a lot that, someone way off in the stands where there's a lot of other noise going on immediately around them, or even especially if you're watching a college or professional game on TV, you don't hear all the on-field communication. This is also true for like, the defense is also shouting stuff to each other. You really only hear the quarterback because I mean they're meant to be the loudest. Of course, they need to be the loudest one if they're giving out some sort of cadence or even an audible. But the offensive line is on basically every play. You'll see the center like pointing out, at the certain defensive linemen, depending on what gap they're lined up in, so that they can adjust based on what blocking scheme the certain play calls for. And this even extends back to the backfield with the quarterback. How I'm used to doing it is that you'll have like an entire play, but then you'll have a specific phrase or like a word or whatever that is essentially just what the offensive line needs to know, and you will especially communicate that. Because if the offensive line doesn't know what to do, then the play is dead before it can even get going. If
Uh,
you have one receiver who doesn't quite run the right route or something, then that can still be remedied. There are still ways to, work around that. But if even just one offensive lineman doesn't know his assignment and goes the wrong way off the snap or tries the wrong technique, you can get a penalty for ineligible man downfield. Or you could just get a free rusher right in the quarterback's face.
you talked about gaps, and
Mm-hmm.
you and I understand gaps, but again, we try to make this show about people that maybe don't understand gaps. What are we talking about with gaps?
Yeah, so there's here, let me like draw it up because I think that'll help me describe it best. But you have like your five offensive linemen, right? And yeah, let me draw it really quick. You have one, two,
It's our version
three.
of the telestrator.
Yeah, I have a whiteboard, but it's like on my wall and I can't like really grab it. So you have your no, I don't want to solve that. No. All right, my phone. Come on. So you have your five offensive line. So you have your five offensive linemen here, and in between them is where we're talking about our gaps. So you have my pen
You need
went
to
away.
move it over just a bit in front of the camera.
Well, I'm trying to like get to where I can draw on it. See, I'm just gonna draw before I talk about it. So drawing these lines here. And you might be going, well, what does that mean? Each of these lines is a gap. So you have a line on either side of the center. And I think you also have one head up.
We only have three offensive linemen on the screen.
No, we have five. We have
Uh,
tackle, guard,
on my phone.
center,
But,
guard, tackle.
okay.
Yeah. What are you
So
thinking?
either side of the center, the guy with
Mm-hmm.
the X, either
Yeah,
side of
guy
the
with the X.
center.
That's how I write the
Yeah,
center.
yeah. That's how I taught you to.
Mm-hmm.
The either side of the center is called the A gap.
Mm-hmm.
There's a left A gap. There's a right A gap, depending upon which side of the
Mm-hmm.
center you're going to run on. And then obviously outside the next gap would be the B gap.
Yeah. So your A gap is going to be in between your center and your guard right here. Your B gap is going to be in between your guard and your tackle, and then your C gap will be outside the tackle. And
Right.
then if you have a
Outside.
tight end, then is that a D gap? Is that what you would call that? outside the tight end.
I would call it a D gap. I mean, and
Okay.
different teams do different things, but yeah.
Um.
So your running back, if it's a running play, is going to get the communication that, look, we're going to give you the ball and we want you to run in the A gap
Mhm.
to the left, or A gap to the right, or B gap or C gap. So they
Mhm.
understand, everybody understands that we are trying to clear out this little alleyway
Mhm.
and make sure that the defenders are not in this gap.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what we're talking about with gaps. And so the very first thing that each lineman has to understand on a running play is which gap are we trying to get the ball, the running back, through. And so accordingly you're going to block to push people out of that gap as best you can.
Mhm. Sorry, I'm
Now,
trying to draw
that's that's
some.
that's that's the idea when you break the huddle. And sometimes it works exactly as you pull it up, as you design. Other times, the defense will maybe read something that you've done and figure out which gap you're going to go into, and then the running back has to adjust pretty
Mhm.
much at the moment that he gets the ball stuffed into his belly. He may go, oh, the A gap is closed, so now I'm going to bounce it out. I'm going to try the B gap, and well, now the B gap's closed, so I'm going to bounce it out to the C gap. But there is a plan before the play where the
Mhm.
ball's going to go.
Yeah. So just to provide an example, because I'm a visual learner, so I find I understand things a lot better when I can actually see it. This is just an example of what we mean with like blocking techniques. And on each play, each offensive lineman has a specific way that they're meant to go. Now, this is an example where this guard here is designed to pull across and go into this B gap, and the running back is supposed to follow him. But what's so important is that, say, this guy doesn't hear it correctly, and he instead thinks he's just supposed to shoot out and block or whatever right there, instead of pulling, then the play is essentially dead. The running back doesn't have his guy to follow like he was supposed to, and so the play isn't going to work how it was designed to work.
Right. And as far as blocks, I mean, we're not going to try to give a tutorial on offensive
No.
line blocking or anything, but um, so just a few terms that the average fan maybe should be familiar with.
Hmm.
If the play calls for the offensive lineman, each of the five, to simply block the person who's straight in front of them and just push them backwards as far as they can, that's called a base block.
Hmm.
It's the ball's snapped and it's a running play, and you just fire forward, engage the person in front of you, and it's essentially uh, I don't care how big your upper body is. It's a battle of your thigh and your gluteus muscles. Your leg drive,
Hmm.
and you're trying to
Yep.
push each other back. It's a little bit maybe comparable to sumo wrestling, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
the same as that drill. You'll see like linemen that have like a sled in front of them. They fire off and
yeah,
hit it. Yeah, it's
yeah,
what
and
that
and
drill is trying to work for.
yeah, and you're trying to get your pads lower, potentially than the guy in front of you, your shoulder pads,
Hmm.
so that you have more leverage to
Hmm.
push them backwards. And that's what we call a base block. Um, there are also, I mean, there's so many different type of blocks. I don't want to spend a whole show on
Yeah.
this, but there's base blocks. There's something called a hook block where you're maybe the guy you're trying to block is lined up kind of on your outside shoulder, but your job is to block him back inside. That means that a smart offensive lineman knows as soon as that ball is snapped, he's got to take a very quick step or two and get outside of the defender. Otherwise, you have no chance of blocking him back inside. That's called a hook block. If you picture a hook, it makes a lot of sense. Um, there are double team blocks. that you can use if you're
Is the
having
hook
trouble.
block right here?
There you go. If
Tackle
you're
right here, trying to block the defender who's lying up outside of him, back in like that.
yeah, if you are if you are really trying to clear out a particular gap, you might assign two offensive linemen to block one defensive lineman. That's a double team block.
Hmm.
You're doing everything that you can to make sure that the very first defensive lineman who would get into that gap is not going to be the one to make the tackle.
Yep.
Um, there are there are trap blocks, which I love a good trap play where you don't block a defensive lineman at all. He's particularly aggressive and very quick off the snap. And so you recognize, hey, our offensive lineman, his feet are not as quick as this defensive lineman, and this defensive lineman is consistently getting around him at the snap. So you design a play where you sort of bait him and say, okay, we're not even going to block you at all. We're going to let you get 3 steps into the backfield, and then we're going to hit you from a guy who's pulling from the other side that you never even saw coming. And
Yep.
he's going to hit you right in your ear hole. You're going to come off the block and you're going to say, oh boy, nobody blocked me. Now, a smart defensive lineman's going to learn this lesson quickly, uh, but essentially, you're blocking him with a guy that he never saw coming. And by the way, sometimes the double team block, you would use that, and it could be at any level of football, but the younger you go in football, I think the double team block becomes even more important. You can have a dominant defensive lineman who's just bigger, faster, stronger than anybody that you have. Nobody on your team can take on this guy one on one. So you assign two guys and essentially you tell them to block half of him from the nose to the shoulder. You got one guy blocking one half of the guy, the other guy blocking the other half of the guy, and it gives him a double wide, you know, space that he has to try to navigate around to get into the backfield.
Yep.
So um, anyway, with offensive linemen, the I think that the more you advance higher levels of football, the smarter your offensive linemen have to be and the more cohesive they have to be as a unit, which is
Of course.
why if you're watching a college or pro football game and an offensive lineman goes down, the average fan might say, well, you know, the guy that went down was 6'5" and 290 pounds, and they're bringing in another guy who's 6'5" and 290 pounds, and they should be fine. It's not necessarily true,
Mm-hmm.
not only because of the physical skills and the how quick they have to be with their feet, but how quick they have to be with their mind
Mm-hmm.
and to communicate with their teammates. Because remember, the defense is jumping around, trying to anticipate what the play is going to be, and moving guys into the best position that they can to try to stop the ball carrier. And then the offensive lineman has to adjust who they're blocking. Um, one thing I want to address, and we might have brought this up many, many shows ago, but these days it's very common for the quarterback to come up behind center, and you'll hear him yell out something like, 56 is the mic. 56 is the mic. And people who don't know go, what in the world is he talking about? Explain exactly what that's about and how that relates to blocking schemes.
Sure. So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, oftentimes you'll have, 5 or 6 offensive linemen, if you include the tight end, blocking 4 defensive linemen. So, like, well, I mean, if you excluding double team blocks, that often leaves the offensive line with an advantage in numbers. So, what does the extra offensive lineman do? Well, he goes to the second level if he's not in pass protection. Obviously, this is assuming it's a run play. where you're allowed to have blockers downfield, but they advance to the second level. And, saying that, oh, so and so is the Mike, that's essentially saying, hey, my offensive lineman who is designated on this play to advance to the next level, or even just if it is in pass protection, hey, my offensive lineman who's designated to look out for any other
What
threats.
is the mic, first of all?
They're a linebacker.
Okay.
They're
The
they're
middle,
they're
the
a middle
middle
linebacker.
linebacker.
Yes.
Yes, the middle
Mm-hmm.
linebacker, and the quarterback can has the best view, and so they yell
Mm-hmm.
out the number so
Yep.
everybody understands who the middle linebacker is,
Yes. Yeah.
and then
It's
in their
essentially
brain,
in
yeah,
helping his offensive lineman out by identifying who is the guy that they need to be on the lookout for.
yeah. So sometimes we'll see, and it looks like we've expanded this topic so much as I'm
Mm,
looking at our time tonight. Uh, Tonight's just going to be about the offensive line. Maybe we'll do a
yeah.
show in the future about defensive line. Um,
Mm,
Sometimes you'll see the quarterback go up, go under center, and he says something, and you'll see one of the offensive linemen, typically I think it's a guard, who, even though they're in the stance, they kind of turn their head back and look at the quarterback, because of what the quarterback just said
mm,
right before the snap,
mm.
kind of to let him know that he heard him, I think. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, what's that communication about
You
most
know
of the
that
time?
that that's one of those things that just kind of varies between teams.
Okay.
Honestly, the teams I've been a part of, that hasn't really been a big thing.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I mean,
hmm
it could be something if the quarterback is altering the snap count,
hmm
trying to draw someone off sides, or maybe the quarterback saw, if there is a particular defender in an offensive game plan as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterback, you know on the defense who to worry about because not all athletes are created equal.
of course.
Every team has a guy or a couple of guys that you're going, we need to know where they are at all times. And I always
Mm,
figured that if the quarterback walks up and says something and one of the offensive linemen kind of pulls his head up and looks at the quarterback to let him know, I heard you. Maybe what the quarterback is saying, hey, number 56, right? I use 56 because Lawrence Taylor is the greatest defender I ever saw.
mm.
I say that as a diehard Cowboys fan. If the quarterback walks up and they were expecting Lawrence Taylor to be on the right side, and they had their blocking scheme set for that, because I mean he was double teamed every play and still made more plays than anybody else.
Mm.
If suddenly he's lined up on the left side, which you will see people do with their elite pass rushers, maybe that's kind of what that's about, where the quarterback is just making sure everybody knows, hey, 56 is over here on the left. So instead of worrying about double teaming on the right, we got a double team on the left.
I'm sure in some teams that that very well could be the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
hmm
All right. Well, man, I really didn't expect us to be able to talk for 28 minutes about offensive line play. And
Right.
because it's not glamorous. But
Mm,
tonight we take our hats off to the big uglies because those guys after the game they don't get the microphone generally stuck in their face. But if you won a football game, it's because your offensive line did their jobs,
yep.
and so underappreciated, uh, guys. And so salute to you. Uh,
hmm
so we were gonna throw out one other segment tonight
hmm
because since there's not much going on in F1 racing,
Yeah.
we thought it might be fun if I throw out a famous football name and you try
hmm
to draw a comparison to maybe an F1 driver who kind of fills that
hmm
role in the F1 world. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna come up with five names.
Sure. They could be from history, Could be from NFL history, could be current. My picks could be from Formula One history or current. Just kind
Yeah.
of on the fly. We have not really discussed
I'm
at
gonna. I'm
all
gonna.
who we're going to talk about.
No,
So,
we
and my
haven't.
reasonings could be for a multitude of reasons, whether it's oh they
Okay.
participated in their sport around the same time or something else. So we'll see, I guess.
I'm gonna try to throw out not just some favorite famous players,
Mm,
but the reason that I'm throwing out that player, which will
mm.
hopefully help you to
Obviously, I'm gonna throw out my reason for
yeah,
why.
yeah.
Yeah.
So between you and me, any discussion about history always starts with the same guy.
Mm,
It's our favorite guy. Uh,
mm,
he wore 12 for the Cowboys, and what I'm looking for here is
mm,
Roger Staubach is who we're talking about.
mm,
Uh, Captain America for the Dallas Cowboys, clean cut guy, and his biggest strength was that you never felt like th- he could always lead you back. You know,
mm,
he was a leader, and you just felt like he would always find a way to win. Charlie Waters, the famous safety for the Cowboys at the time, said, "We never felt like we lost when Roger was our quarterback. We just felt like we ran out of time because Roger was so competitive and such a leader, and he could inspire the guys around him to rise to new heights." And so, to me, what I'm looking for here is the comparable driver who I realize it's more of an individualized sport, but
mm,
he's just got this aura about him that just you always believe he's going to find a way to win,
mm.
even if he's not the most, whatever in whatever category.
I got one for you.
Okay, okay, here we go.
All right, so I'm gonna throw out three-time Formula One champion, triumphing in 1975, 77, and 84, Niki Lauda. Some comparisons, directly comparisons. Lauda at one point or another in his career did sport the number 12 on his car. He won two championships for Ferrari, the biggest and most famous team in Formula One history, while Roger, of course, won two Super Bowls for the Dallas Cowboys, the biggest and most famous NFL team. But also going a little deeper, Niki Lauda, of course, is famous for coming back from the brink of death in the 1976 season while he was dominating the championship, and he missed a month and then came back when most people thought that he would, if he even came back at all, it would at least not be that same season. But he came back and still continued fighting and only lost the championship by 1 point to James Hunt. And so he showed that same tenacity and competitive drive and not just giving up.
Okay.
You
All
know.
right. Well, that's 1 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, I'm gonna stick with the Cowboys, and
Yeah.
guy who's super nice. Wore number 22 for the Cowboys,
Mm-hmm.
and is the NFL's all-time leading rusher. There's no dispute. But I think that people who've watched enough football, as much as I love Emmett Smith,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm talking about, and he's
Yeah.
got the record and he earned it. He deserves it. He's a great guy. He had a great offensive line and was in the last great era of the Cowboys. Um, but nobody who's watched football has ever said that Emmett was the greatest runner they'd ever
Mm-hmm.
seen. He was in the right place at the right time with to make all the records, and good for him, and I'm not criticizing him in any way, but he's got all the skins on the wall, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody really says he's the greatest.
Okay. I've I've got maybe an obscure one. Um, I'm gonna throw out Rubens Barrichello. Now he never won the Formula One World Drivers' Championship, but he was the teammate to Michael Schumacher when he went on his dominant run of form in the early 2000s to win 5 consecutive drivers' titles with Ferrari, and Barrichello was his teammate. So he, maybe while he wasn't the one basking in all the glory of winning these championships, he was still a part of all those constructors championships. He was there to pick up the pieces whenever Schumacher, needed a wingman. And so, there's a reason Ferrari kept him around all those years, even though he wasn't the one bringing home all the championships.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, Emmett had his three
Mm-hmm.
championships, but
Yeah.
again, he's he's the all-time leading rusher,
Mm-hmm.
but very few people will say that's the best runner I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Okay, third.
Okay. I have another one for you if you
Okay,
didn't like that answer.
okay,
I'll throw out Sebastian Vettel. He's a 4-time world champion. He, um, 4-time consecutive world champion at the start of the 2010s, 53-time race winner, which is now the fourth of all time, fourth most all time. So he has the individual statistics, he has the championships. Um, it's hard comparing a running back to a
yeah,
Formula One driver. I feel like a quarterback is obviously the most comparable position, but I don't know. I guess that's a more a fair comparison, I suppose, now that I think about it a little bit more, because no one's going to say that Sebastian Vettel is the greatest Formula One driver of all time, but no one can deny his accolades and his championships and where he ranks among the greats.
okay. Number three. This one may be tougher, but maybe not because you've got a library of information in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw out Dick Butkus
Ooh.
because in his time, Dick Butkus, who was not the most athletic guy you've ever seen, he's not the most athletically gifted guy, but he was the most feared guy. He was the one that everybody worried about. And by the way, Dick Butkus never even won a playoff game. His Chicago Bears, and he played on teams with Gale Sayers, which is weird. They never even won a playoff game. But the guy who was absolutely feared, and I was tempted to go with Lawrence Taylor, but he's got 2 Super Bowl championships. So I want the guy that everybody was afraid of because he was just so intimidating, and yet he never translated that into a championship.
Perfect. Obviously, Formula One is not a violent contact sport the way football is, and so this person wasn't exactly feared, because it's kind of hard to fear somebody when they're not actively sprinting at you trying to take your head off. But he was still very much respected and is seen as one of the most worthy drivers who never won a championship but should have, and that is Sterling Moss, somebody who drove in the 50s and then even into the early 60s.
Okay.
Mhm.
For number four, I'm going to give you easy,
Okay.
probably, because any discussion, if I have 5 guys to talk about, you have to throw in the goat. You have to
Hmm.
have the GOAT discussion. And in the NFL, even though he was not the greatest athlete, he was the greatest winner. And
Hmm.
that's what it's all about, especially for a quarterback. We're talking about Tom Brady, his
Hmm.
all of his Super Bowl championships, um, of all time. I know who your favorite is, but literally, who is the GOAT?
Well, there are a few heads to the goat debate. I think Formula One has one of the most interesting, but also fair goat debates of all time, because they're the record for the the person with the most individual drivers championships is a tie. So some people, and respectedly, would say that Lewis Hamilton, because he is tied with the most championships of all time, that being 7. He has the record for the most race wins, the most pole positions, and the most podiums of all time, as well as the most points scored. However, I believe that in Formula One, with it being an engineering sport just as much as it is a driving sport. There's some nuance and some just clarification and context when it comes to understanding what transpires for certain drivers to take their championships. And so I believe that Lewis Hamilton is much more of a product of the machinery he was given, largely with Mercedes, because he won 7 championships, but he won 6 of them in a 7 year span with
Okay.
Mercedes. So the driver I'm going to throw out is Michael Schumacher.
Hmm.
Now, at the time of his retirement, he had solely the most championships before Lewis had tied him. He had the most. He had all the records when he retired,
Yeah.
and he stood alone as the driver with the most championships. And he won championships with 2 different teams. He won with Benetton in 1994 and 95, and then he won 5 straight with Ferrari to start the 2000s. So he has that comparison to Brady. He also, you know, I feel like he had a lot more competition for some of his championships. Now he also has some of the most dominant championship seasons ever, but he he also had some serious competition and was able to come out on top. And so I feel like Michael Schumacher is a more worthy GOAT candidate, even though I still stand that Max Verstappen is the most talented and the best driver of all time. But if you have to bring in the accolades and all that, I'll put my money on Schumacher over Hamilton. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're gonna say Walter Payton? Can, can, can we make it 6? Because I have a good comparison for that. All right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, and also one more thing I want to throw out about Walter Payton is not in any way trying to devalue anything that we just said about him, but I think his legacy and the aura about him, his mythos is only increased by the fact that we unfortunately lost him too soon. Would you agree? Like when it comes to athletes who pass away, either like during their career or like they didn't get to live out a full long life, that there is some conversation about out of respect for the dead and whatnot that only elevates their perceived status. And so of course. But a driver that fits those same categories, that is absolutely revered as one of the all-time greats. I just described Max Verstappen as the who I believe to be the best and most talented driver of all time. This is another guy who gets put in that conversation despite only winning 3 championships. Um, he retired with the most pole positions of all time. I say retired. It wasn't exactly his choice. And he had the second most wins all time at the time of his death. I'm talking about Ayrton Senna, who unfortunately passed away due to a crash in the San Marino Grand Prix in 1994. So, mhm, mhm. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Ooh. Oh, I got it. I have two. I have two, and unfortunately, the second one was not forgotten to history, although he deserves to be. They were actually teammates back in 1996. I'm, of course, talking about 1996 and then 97 world champions Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve. Both one-time champions with Williams. 1996, the year where Damon Hill finally kind of got his big break after having a kind of lackluster career thus far, having to play second fiddle to more experienced teammates or having to sit behind as Michael Schumacher dominated in 94 and 95. He finally got his big break. Um, After Schumacher moved to a lackluster Ferrari, still trying to kind of revive them. But Damon Hill in the all conquering Williams that he had got paired up with rookie. Now, he wasn't very young for a rookie, but Jacques Villeneuve, after going and winning IndyCar in the United States, decided to try his hand at Formula One and had actually one of the best rookie seasons ever. But Damon Hill did take the title and then immediately got fired because before the season, the team had determined that they were going to bring in Heinz Harold Frentzen to replace him. And so then the next season, that opened the door for Villeneuve to take the title. And then he didn't fall off quite as quickly as Damon Hill did, but he pretty quickly thereafter left Williams, which was still a really good team, for another team that he wanted to kind of be the guy and revive them, much like Schumacher was starting to do with Ferrari, which of course that didn't work out because there's only one Michael Schumacher. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. I want to flip the script. I want to do more of this actually next week, um, where I actually bring up an F1 driver and kind of describe them, obviously, to help you out. But then turn the microphone over to you to give me your NFL comparison. But I want to really quickly do one of those. Um, who is the NFL equivalent? True. Who for you is the NFL equivalent? Because I have one of Charles Leclerc. He is still on the grid. He's a current driver who has been in what is normally seen as a top team for almost all of his career. He's been consistently seen as a top driver in terms of personal talent and skill and especially qualifying pace, but he's just never had it all put together through either just personal mistakes. All right, we will next week. I am. It's insane how the comparisons are. Mm-hmm. Well, that's also what I would say. Is that Charles Leclerc is unfortunately the Josh Allen of Formula One. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Bills were my preseason Super Bowl champion going into last season. Another thing we need to do pretty soon is our kind of predictions for next season. As you know, we're past the draft, we're getting into training camp and all that. Maybe we'll do that in a couple months as we get closer to the preseason. Then maybe we'll do predictions of like where will the NFL be by mid-season, and then in mid-season we come back and say, okay, now what were we right about? What were we wrong about? Now where do we think we're going to be in February? You're not wrong very often, so yeah, I get it. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Oh yeah. Yeah, we clearly we have a lot to continue talking about next week, but we're out of time. Would you look at that? My my, look at the time. Well, mhm. Yeah, we're not getting into that. I don't know how we could have done the show. Um, anyway, there's a bug on my computer monitor. So, yeah, yeah. Well, it power's on. So, anyway, thank you for tuning into this pretty interesting episode of Inside the Helmet. I hope you join us again next week where we're gonna have something else to talk about, but then I assume we're gonna, if we remember anyway, we're gonna dive more into this comparing NFL players and possibly NBA players, but definitely more Formula One drivers. Um, True, yeah, we'll try and bring that as well, give them some attention as well. But thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.